Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto DarkVerse and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Jonin Naruto Build Harem with Kurenai Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. It was a bright sunny day for the village of Konohagakure. The sounds of birds chirping, children laughing and the sound of people talking could be heard echoing through the streets. All in all, today was a typical normal day for the peaceful village. Unfortunately for one spiky blonde-haired Jonin, he had been summoned by the Hokage and council for an important meeting. As he was walking through the streets nodding to those who greeted him, he couldn't help but think back to when his life changed drastically. 12 years ago, the blonde sighed while looking up at the clouds, still continuing to head to his destination. Flashback. To San. Ka-san, cried a 3-year-old blonde desperately looking for his parents. He continued running through the house, checking everywhere until he reached the last room. It was his father's study. He opened the door and saw two large figures. One had blonde spiky hair with long bangs and deep blue eyes. The other had long beautiful red hair with clear purple eyes. They were both in their battle uniforms. The blonde had a Jonin vest with a large white cloak with red flames at the bottom. The woman had a Jonin vest too, but she had a large katana strapped on her back. The two figures looked towards the door and saw the frightened 3-year-old. Sochi, the red-haired woman said, walking towards the boy. She got on her knees and hugged him. The small blonde quickly wrapped his arms around his mother, crying into her vest. SSHH, mommy's here, everything's going to be alright, Naru-chan. Naruto quickly calmed down, hiccuping slightly. A sudden appearance of two more figures made the large blonde look towards the window ledge. The two figures stepped into the light, revealing themselves. One had a goat mask on while the other wore a Konoha headband on an angle, hiding his left eye. He had spiky gray hair that was also on an angle. He also wore a mask covering his mouth. The goat-masked ANBU was the first to talk, however. Hokage-sama. Kushina-sama, the demon is on its way. It's less than a minute away from the village. The blonde nodded, picking up a pile of fuinjutsu scrolls and sighed. The large blonde walked towards his son and, like his wife, he kneeled down, putting the palm of his hand on his son's head, ruffling his hair and smiling. Minato-sensei, the gray-haired teenager said, walking towards the trio. I know Kakashi. Minato started, only to be interrupted by the sound of a large explosion. He sighed. I guess the Kyuubi is already here then. But I can't help but think something's not right here. Why would the Kyuubi randomly attack a village? Minato thought. Minato then placed his hand underneath Naruto's chin so he was looking him in the eye. You're going to be an important ninja, Naruto, one day, one that will make this village proud of you as we are. Kakashi, take care of Naruto please. I will go meet the fox in a couple of minutes, so stay here with him please, Minato said, tears staining his cheeks. Kakashi nodded his head and walked over towards Naruto, placing a hand on his shoulder. Hi sensei. Minato looked at his wife, knowing what she was about to do. You're going to meet it, aren't you? He asked, looking at the fire in her eyes. She nodded while looking at Naruto. Naru-chan, mommy's going to be gone for a little while. You be good for Kakashi, remember we love you and will always be proud of you. Kushina finished kissing Naruto's forehead. She walked towards the open window where the Kyuubi was visible and was trampling on buildings with its 9 giant tails waving. Kushina jumped onto the window ledge and gave Naruto one last glance, showing her tear-stained eyes, and blew him a kiss and left in by Shunshin. Minato stood up, taking a deep breath, and left in a yellow flash. Naruto stood terrified at the sight of the 9-tailed demon. As he looked outside the window, a large explosion brought Naruto out of his trance. The explosion was where his mother had gone to. He felt tears flow down his cheeks and fell to his knees. Ka-san. Naruto shouted, shaking. Kakashi grabbed Naruto and brought him into a hug and pulling his head down so he couldn't see what was happening outside. Naruto's vision suddenly started to become blurry and his head started to spin. He felt his eyes roll into the back of his head. He heard Kakashi shout his name, but he couldn't react as he felt himself lose consciousness. Several hours later, Naruto slowly started to open his eyes. Squinting, he saw a white ceiling. Hospital, Naruto thought as he remembered being brought there after he had overtrained. He opened his eyes fully, looking around, noticing 3 nurses and tons of flowers and get well cards. He sighed and looked to the left to see who was sitting next to him. He smiled slightly as he saw Kakashi asleep in the chair, his one visible eye closed. Naruto's eyes widened when he realized why Kakashi was here. He began to panic, setting off the alarms on the machine next to him and also waking Kakashi up. Kakashi walked over towards Naruto, putting a hand on his shoulder, successfully calming Naruto. Naruto looked up to Kakashi with a questioning glance. Naruto, we need to be quiet. The Hokage is about to make a speech to the whole village. Naruto nodded but was concerned. He had never heard Kakashi call his father the Hokage. He had always called him sensei. Naruto looked out of the window where he could see the top of the Hokage tower. There was 3 figures. He couldn't make out who they were. Then he heard one of the figures speak. People of Konohagakure, tonight the village was attacked by the Kyuubi no Yoko. It has destroyed families and homes and caused great losses, such as Lady Namikaze, also known as Kushina Namikaze. She died sacrificing her life saving the west sector of Konoha. We also lost our beloved 4th Hokage. He died sealing the demon into a newborn baby. The child has saved us all today, the voice said, using chakra to enhance the sound. Cries of outrage could be heard as soon as he finished his speech. We must kill the baby, it's the demon, someone screeched, causing roars of approval. Kakashi shook his head at the stupidity of the villagers. Silence, all of you. This is how you treat the 4th sacrifice, so be it, but from today on anyone who mentions the Kyuubi being sealed away will be killed. As I, Hiruzen Sarutobi, have retook the mantle of the Hokage, the Sandaime roared, causing everyone to scatter. Naruto laid back in his bed staring at the ceiling until the door opening made him sit up. There, entering his room, was the Sandaime and a long white-haired man with red lines under his eyes. It's good to see you up, Naruto-kun. The whole village have been worried about you. I'm sorry for your loss, Naruto-kun. The god of Shinobi said, picking up on of the get well cards. Naruto nodded, not quite knowing what to say. Naruto-kun, can I ask you something since I know you heard my speech? Sarutobi asked and continued once he saw Naruto nod. Naruto-kun, can you tell me what you think of the new baby that has the Kyuubi sealed inside him, and will you also become a ninja like your mother and father? Hiruzen asked, getting a surprised look from Naruto. I believe that the baby is just that, a baby, so I don't hate him, and yes, I will become a ninja, Naruto said, getting a smile from the 3 older men. And why, Naruto, what is your purpose of becoming a ninja? The Sandaime asked curiously. I want to become a ninja because I want to be able to protect those precious to me, Naruto said, the last part with fire in his eyes. Ah yes, that is a very noble reason. The will of fire burns through you, Naruto-kun brightly. Naruto, I'd like you to meet someone. His name is Jiraiya and was your father's sensei and also your godfather. Naruto went wide-eyed at the man next, the Hokage, who held a smile and walked forwards towards Naruto. It's good to see you again, Gaki. The last time I saw you was when you were in diapers. Anyway, I have been allowed to stay in the village with you until you make Chunin, and I will train you in the way of the ninja along with Kakashi. So get some sleep. Tomorrow you will be more tired than you have ever been. Jiraiya finished leaving the room with Hokage. Naruto laid back down and started to close his eyes. He still couldn't believe his parents were gone. However, he gulped at Jiraiya's last words. What have I gotten myself into? Naruto thought, drifting off to sleep. End of flashback. Naruto continued his walk towards the Hokage's tower. He was curious to what the council wanted. As he walked, he noticed the empty Uchiha district. He frowned, remembering his best friend. Flashback. A 4-year-old Naruto was walking through the streets of Konoha, waving at the civilians that greeted him. He frowned inwardly when they called him Naruto-sama, or Namikaze-sama. He didn't like it because he felt he hadn't earned the respect yet, but knew they weren't going to stop due to who his parents were, so he continued his walk towards the Ninja Academy. He was excited because today was the day of his Jonin exam and he was certain he was going to pass. Naruto walked into the academy and into his classroom. He was rushed by fangirls. Even though he was polite towards them, he would never have an interest in any of them. He continued to walk up the stairs to his chair. He saw the dead last laughing at a prank he had done. Iruka Yumino, his parents, were killed in the Kyuubi attack and acted stupid to get laughs and hid his sadness behind his mask. However, Naruto saw right through Iruka's mask and helped him whenever he could. Naruto sat down in his chair next to a black-haired boy who smiled once he saw Naruto, barely being able to sit down due to excitement. "I can't help but notice you're little excited, Naruto," the black-haired boy giving Naruto a questioning glance. "I'm just excited. After today I will be a real ninja, you know," Naruto said, now serious and waiting for the class sensei to come in. Itachi looked at the boy that was 3 years younger than him in amazement. It was no secret Naruto was as strong as him. He was known as the prodigy of his clan, yet here was a non-Uchiha just as strong. He had watched Naruto train. Naruto would spend all day training and wouldn't stop until he had completely exhausted himself. "Yes, Naruto, I do know I am excited too, but I wonder which one of us will get Rookie of the Year," Itachi said, now looking at the door where the class sensei had walked in, causing the students to talk about how they were going to pass and how proud their parents would be. Naruto inwardly frowned. "Okay, settle down. We will begin the exam in a couple of minutes. The exam will be set in 2 different parts. The first part will be a test of knowledge. The second part will be a physical test to test your abilities. The third part will be a ninjutsu test," the sensei said, getting looks of confusion from everyone but Itachi and Naruto. The knowledge test was over quickly with only a few people struggling to finish it. The Chunin sensei came around, picking up all the tests and ushering everyone outside to perform the kunai and shuriken test. The test was see how many kunai and shuriken hit the wooden dummy. Naruto scored a perfect 210. He added wind chakra to his kunai, making it stick a few inches deeper into the wooden dummy. Itachi scored 200, hitting every target. The ninjutsu test was to perform 3 standard ninjutsu: Bunshin no Jutsu, Henge no Jutsu, and Kawarimi no Jutsu. However, Naruto and Itachi flew through the exam with flying colors. They walked out of the exam room with 2 brand new forehead protectors. "Congratulations to all of you who passed. Those of you who didn't, don't give up and maybe you will have better luck next year," the sensei said, walking out of the classroom. Naruto and Itachi looked at each other and smirked. "I expect to see you at the finals of the Chunin exams," Itachi said, leaving a still smiling. Defiantly, Naruto thought. End of flashback. The blonde 15-year-old looked up and smiled as he thought of the Chunin exam finals. Flashback. Would Namikaze Naruto and Uchiha Itachi come to the arena? The protractor said, getting roars of approval from the entire crowds, making the Hokage and the Tsuchikage death for a couple of seconds. "A bit loud, aren't they, Hokage Dono?" the Tsuchikage asked, but soon saw a smile on the Hokage's face that proved he thought otherwise. "Not at all, Tsuchikage Dono. They are just extremely eager to see the prodigy of the Uchiha clan and the son of Minato Namikaze," the Sandaime said, and frowned once he saw the Tsuchikage scowl at the mention of Minato Namikaze. "Yes. Well, if he is anything like his father, the Uchiha will have trouble," the Tsuchikage said, making the old Hokage nod in approval. "Naruto, you better be prepared because I'm going all out," a 10-year-old Itachi said while activating his Sharingan and getting into a fighting stance. "I wouldn't have it any other way," a 7-year-old Naruto said while also getting into a fighting style and holding out a pair of trench knives that suddenly gained a blue outline on them. Itachi smirked as he looked at the knives with his Sharingans. "I see you have mastered your wind affinity. This will only make things more interesting," Itachi said, jumping towards Naruto and going through hand seals. "Gukaku no Jutsu, great fireball technique," Itachi shouted, blowing a large fireball out of his mouth that scorched the earth underneath it. Naruto jumped in the air using chakra to enhance the height to avoid the large fireball. He landed behind Itachi and threw the trench knife that was covered in Fuden chakra at Itachi. His eyes widened when the knife hit, but they soon narrowed when he saw Itachi explode into a flock of crows. Naruto quickly put his hands together and shouted, "Kai!" Itachi's image faded and Naruto just had enough time to see Itachi come at him with a kunai in hand. He sliced Itachi's kunai in half and also hitting Itachi's hand, causing a large amount of blood to pour out of the wound. Itachi jumped back, his feet sliding across the floor. He looked at the wound and winced. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was still pretty deep and goddamn painful. He jumped into the air again and went through another set of hand seals, ignoring the amount of pain that went into his hand every time he moved it. Goryuken no Jutsu, Great Dragon Fire Technique. A giant fire dragon was sent flying towards Naruto at an immense speed. Naruto saw the giant fire dragon and kept his cool and going through a selection of his own hand seals. Suiryuden no Jutsu, Water Dragon Projectile Technique. A giant water dragon appeared from large pool in the arena and went flying towards the fire dragon. As soon as both jutsus collided, they exploded, causing strong winds to blow around the arena, making the spectators cover their faces. The steam that covered the area left everyone blinded. After a couple of seconds, the steam started to clear. The sounds of panting could be heard from within. Everyone stared wide-eyed at sight. Naruto had caught Itachi's fist in his palm, and Itachi had caught Naruto's fist in his palm, and their knees were fighting for supremacy. Itachi swiped Naruto's leg from underneath him, knocking him off balance. Itachi then kicked Naruto in the stomach, sending him back, but Itachi was also sent flying by Naruto's kick that connected to the side of his face. Both fighters skidded across the ground and hitting the sides of the stadium walls. They slowly stood up, their legs barely being able to support them. They ignored the cheers of the spectators and continued to stare at each other. After a couple of seconds, they both ran at each other at an extremely fast speed. Even for Jonins, they both launched their fists back and launched them forward. They hit each other at the same time but did not move. Their fists had connected with the other's cheek and had their eye closed on the side where the fist had connected. Both fighters jumped back so they were at least 20 meters away from each other. Both Itachi and Naruto smiled. To think even with my Sharingan I can barely keep up with your speed. It's a shame this fight has to come to an end, but I can tell you now I will win this, Itachi said, all the while still smiling. We'll see, Naruto shouted, running towards Itachi. Itachi's eyes widened when he saw Naruto run at him. How the hell does he have this much energy? I can barely stand up, Itachi thought as he saw Naruto get closer towards him. He quickly went through a number of hand seals. Doryuheki, Earth-style wall, a giant wall formed in front of Itachi, blocking Naruto's path. Naruto saw the wall and frowned. If I jump over it, I'll waste my chakra and I'll be defenseless. Excellent plan, Itachi, but I still have a lot up my sleeve you haven't seen. Naruto continued to run at Itachi, however he started to go through hand seals that caused the ninjas in the arena to widen their eyes. Naruto's hand was suddenly covered with electricity. He thrusted his hand into the earth wall, cracking it instantly. Chidori! Naruto shouted. Itachi's eyes widened when he saw his earth wall begin to crack. He gasped when he saw Naruto's hand pierce the wall like paper. He stood there in shock as he saw the rest of Naruto's body break through the wall. Naruto saw Itachi frozen and smirked. He held out his hand and formed a small blue sphere, which caused many of the spectators to mutter, Yondaime-sama. Rasengan! Naruto shouted, sending the ball of chakra into Itachi's chin, sending him flying across the field. He bounced several times before he stopped. He laid there unmoving except for his chest moving up and down, showing that he was still alive. Naruto was also struggling. That last Rasengan used up the remaining chakra he had left. His vision had become blurry. He saw Itachi's face had cuts on his eyes and mouth and sported a small burn mark where the Rasengan had connected. His hand was also still bleeding from earlier. The protractor walked into the middle of the arena and looked at Naruto. He had bruises and cuts all over his face and burn marks on his arms, legs and clothes. He looked at Itachi, who was unconscious. Shosha! Namikaze Naruto! The crowd roared in approval and clapped for the two fighters. The medics ran towards the two. They immediately put Itachi on a stretcher and took him to the hospital. The medics ran towards Naruto to check if he was alright. Naruto-sama, are you alright? A young female medic asked. Naruto smiled and nodded. Yeah, I'm feeling grey. Naruto collapsed and fell to the floor face first, but still held a smile on his face. Man, I can't believe how strong Itachi is. I trained with a Sannin and a Nikki and I barely won, Naruto thought in amazement before he fell unconscious. End of flashback. Naruto frowned as he continued to walk towards the tower. He missed Itachi. They were like brothers. He smiled at the appearance of two people. One had purple hair. She wore a mesh top and a coat with a high collar. The other was a long black-haired woman. She had beautiful red eyes and wore a red and white bandaged uniform that showed a lot of leg, much to his enjoyment. They were Anko Mitarashi and Kurenai Yuhi. Naruto had developed a crush on Kurenai ever since he first met her. She was everything he wanted in a woman: strong, independent, beautiful and kind. However, he knew her reputation, the Ice Queen of Konoha. He hated when people would call her that. He wasn't surprised that she avoided the male population due to the fact they only wanted her for her body. That didn't mean she didn't have any male friends. She was good friends with himself and Kakashi, but he would never tell her his true feelings as he felt he would be betraying her trust if he did. He smiled, remembering the time Kakashi had took him out to meet the rest of the Junins when he had become one. Flashback. Naruto, are you ready? Kakashi said lazily as he leaned on the wall. After couple of minutes, a 10-year-old Naruto came out of his room with his forehead protector stopping his hair, covering his eyes, but Kakashi's eye went to what Naruto was wearing. It was his brand new Jonin flak jacket he had gotten. Kakashi's one visible eye widened slightly. He's looking more like you, sensei, every day, Kakashi thought. Getting his composure back, he pushed himself off the wall, looking sharp. Ototo, we should get going. I don't want Anko threatening to cut me again. He visibly shivered at the thought. Naruto nodded and followed Kakashi out of the door. Kakashi and Naruto walked into one of the ninja-only bars, walking past a pair of drunk Chunin that were complaining that they had been on guard duty for 2 weeks running. Naruto did feel sorry for them as he hated guard duty. It was too easy and boring. They continued walking towards the back of the bar. They finally reached a booth where Anko, Maida Guy, Hana Inuzuka and Kurenai. The four looked curiously at Kakashi as he was relatively early. About time, Kakashi. I was about to come looking for you and play a little game I call What Doesn't Grow Back, Anko said, making said Junin shiver. He sat down next to her, nonetheless pouring himself some sake. However, the rest of the Junins were looking at Naruto curiously. Hana was the first to voice her opinion, however. Hey Kakashi, who's the kid? He looks like a little yondaime. Kakashi looked at her lazily for a few seconds before answering her. Ask him, he said, making Kurenai and Hana angry at his laziness. Naruto, however, had not taken his eyes off Kurenai. He was hypnotized by her red eyes. They were the most beautiful things he had ever seen. He was so entranced by Kurenai he hadn't realized that Guy was talking to him. Hello, my youthful friend, may I ask your name? Guy shouted, causing many people to sigh. Naruto shook his head, getting himself out of his trance. He turned to Guy, who was giving him a thumbs up and showing his teeth. Huh, you say something? Naruto asked. Guy's jaw dropped to the floor. Kakashi looked on, slightly proud. Anko was laughing her off while Kurenai and Hana facefaulted. However, Guy recovered quickly and pointed an EC-using finger. Damn you and your hip attitude, Kakashi. Kakashi looked lazily towards Guy. Huh, you say something? Guy fell back into his chair, weeping anime-style tears while mumbling something about hip attitude. Anko was now getting fed up. She was extremely curious to who the chibi yondaime was. Being the straightforward person she was, she asked, Yo Gaki, who are you and why do you look like the yondaime? Everyone facefaulted at how blunt she was. However, Naruto just scratched his head and smiled sheepishly. Oh, sorry about that, My name is Naruto. Naruto Namikaze, and I probably look like the yondaime because I'm his son, Naruto said, sitting down next to Kurenai and blushing slightly. He was grateful the booth was slightly dark, which hid his blush from everyone who except from Kakashi had their jaw on the floor. You're Naruto? You must be about 10. How do you have a Junin jacket? Anko asked, amazed and also feeling slightly stupid of not guessing he was the yondaime's son. Naruto looked at her slightly surprised before answering. I have a Junin vest because I'm a Junin. Just became one today actually. Kurenai looked at Naruto slightly amazed by the fact he was a Junin. You must be really strong for your age to have made Junin, Kurenai asked, getting a blush from Naruto due to the praise. Huh, thank you EHMM, Naruto said, not sure what her name was. She caught on quickly and apologized. Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, my name is Kurenai Yuhi. These two are called Anko and Hana, and the grown man crying in the corner is Guy, she said, amazed by the fact he was listening to her. The rest of the male population in the village just looked at her body when she was talking. So Naruto, can you tell us what you prefer? Anko started getting raised eyebrows from Kakashi. I meant in jutsu's pervert, she said, hitting Kakashi over the head, and looked at Naruto waiting for an answer. Well, I'm really an all-round type of person. I prefer ninjutsu and taijutsu, but I like fuinjutsu. He saw Anko visibly flinch at the word, however he continued. I'm about average though when it comes to genjutsu. What about you? He finished, looking at Anko, who smirked. Me. I'm amazing at ninjutsu and taijutsu, she said, not giving much away. Guy followed where she had left off. I'm an expert in taijutsu, my youthful friend. Hana, seeing that Guy was finished, also spoke up. I'm proficient in medical jutsu and taijutsu. Kurenai sighed, thinking Naruto was about to laugh at what she specialized in. However, she decided to tell him anyway. I'm a genjutsu expert, she said quickly, and sipping some sake. She looked to her side to see Naruto staring at her. She was getting uncomfortable by his gaze on her, which he caught on to surprisingly. Oh, I'm sorry, it's just you're the first genjutsu specialist I've ever met. I've always found genjutsu interesting, as my best friend is also good at genjutsu, but that's only because of his eyes. I've never been that good at them, but I do know a few. Naruto finished, getting a complete look of disbelief from Kurenai. Kurenai looked at Naruto with a newfound respect. What, he finds genjutsu interesting? Usually when I tell people about genjutsu, they don't even care. I think I could become friends with you, Naruto. Kurenai thought as she suddenly smelt the scent of smoke, making her frown, knowing who it was already. A tall figure appeared into the booth. He had spiky black hair, a shapely beard, and was hanging a cigarette out of his mouth. Hello, Kurenai-chan, Hana, Kakashi, Guy. He nodded to each of them and pulled a seat to the table. Hello, Asuma, my youthful friend. What brings you here tonight? Guy asked. Just getting a drink before going to bed, Asuma said, getting a snort from Anko. Got something to say, Anko? He said with venom. Anko looked at him, unaffected by his hate. It was no secret that Anko and Asuma hated each other. Anko hated Asuma because he was a pig, in her words, using women and smoking. Asuma hated Anko because she had turned him down for a little fun, as he would call it. He also hated the fact she was with Kurenai, so he couldn't talk to Kurenai alone. He was attracted to Kurenai but always got turned down whenever he asked her out. I do actually. You come over here smoking and then say you only came in for a drink. We all know why you're really here, and believe me, stalking her will not make her go out with you. Like she would anyway, Anko said, smirking at Asuma's face that was no filled with rage. What would you know, you snake whore? Asuma smirking at Anko's also rage-filled face. Kakashi was also slightly angry and was about to say something until Naruto spoke up. Why do you call her a snake whore, Asuma-san? Naruto asked innocently, getting raised eyebrows from everyone. Asuma stared at Naruto and saw how close he was to Kurenai and snarled a little. What's a little brat like you doing in here, Naruto? Naruto slightly scowled but kept his calm. I'm here because I'm a Jonin. Can you not see the jacket now? Would you please answer my first question? Asuma looked at Naruto's flak jacket and scowled. I guess they'll let anyone be a Jonin now. The reason people call her snake whore is because she was the apprentice of Orochimaru. Naruto looked at Asuma a little disgusted. That's it, who cares if she was the apprentice of Orochimaru? She's not him, and I doubt she's a whore. Naruto said with no emotion, startling Asuma a little, but then scoffed. What would you know, you're just a kid, he said. Naruto decided to ignore the comment and continued to talk to Kurenai about genjutsu. After about half an hour later, Asuma stood up, getting ready to leave. He turned around to face Kurenai. Fancy having a little bit of fun, Kurenai-chan? Since it's your first time, I'll make it special, Asuma said, winking at Kurenai, who looked completely disgusted. No, Asuma, I don't want to have fun with you, and I never will, so stop wasting my time by asking, she said rather coldly. Asuma stood in shock. This was the first time Kurenai had ever talked to him like that. She had always been polite when turning him down. he looked over towards Anko and saw her laughing loudly. Without thinking, Asuma pulled his trench knives out and dashed towards Anko, startling the group as his Fuden-enhanced blades were about to hit Anko. There was a sudden clang that shocked everyone. Naruto had stopped Asuma's blades with his own similar set that were also Fuden-enhanced. Everyone in the bar had begun to look at the two, however they both glared at each other. Naruto's ocean blue eyes glared at Asuma's coal black. "I think you should leave, Asuma-san," Naruto said calmly. Asuma growled a little before noticing everyone in the bar were staring at the two Jonin. He pulled his knives away and looked at Anko, Kurenai, Hana, Guy and Kakashi. "I'm sorry for anything I said that offended you." With that, Asuma left the bar, still angry at Naruto. "Wow, did you see the Yondaime's son stand up to the Sandame's son?" a random ninja said, causing everyone to start talking again. Naruto sat down, ignoring the rants-off guy about how youthful he was. Kurenai stared at Naruto for a couple of seconds before sipping her sake again. Anko was laughing and saying Asuma ran off with his tail between his legs. Kakashi and Hana just gave him proud looks. An hour later, Naruto and Kakashi were getting ready to leave the bar. Kakashi had a passed-out guy flung over his shoulder. "Good night," the girls shouted, leaving Naruto, Kakashi and an unconscious guy to walk home. Naruto took one last looking, staring at Kurenai and blushing slightly. "Come Odoto, you can stare at Kurenai's later," Kakashi said, smiling underneath his mask as Naruto blushed heavily, began to walk off, muttering, "Pervert, she is beautiful though," Naruto thought while walking home with a smile on his face. End of flashback. "Ohayo Naruto," Kurenai shouted and waved at Naruto. He blushed slightly and went over to them. "Ohayo Kurenai-chan, Anko-chan," Naruto said, waving back to them. As he got closer, he saw Anko and Kurenai slightly blush. "You just keep getting taller and taller, Naruto, you're even taller than me now," Kurenai said, making Naruto blush, "and more handsome," Anko added with a smirk. Now Anko-chan, don't give up on Aniki, especially after all the nice things he said about you," Naruto said, looking away with a smirk. He was about to turn back to look at her until he was picked up by the collar by a very feisty-looking Anko. "What did that lazy bum say?" Anko said seriously. Naruto gulped. He said he liked how strong and independent you are." Anko looked at Naruto for a couple of seconds before smirking. "So the lazy bastard does care. I'll show him just how strong and independent I can be." Anko then started running down the street, knocking people over. "Kurenai, remember what I said earlier? You need to get laid or you will die a virgin," Anko shouted while turning the corner. Kurenai turned a bright red as everyone in the street was now staring at her. She was about to run away until she felt a hand on her shoulder. She looked up and saw Naruto smiling at her. "Don't be embarrassed, Kurenai-chan. You're not the only one," Naruto said, making her smile and nod. "So, what are you doing up so early, Kurenai-chan?" Naruto asked, getting another smile from Kurenai. "Oh yeah, I nearly forgot. I went to see Hokage-sama to see who was on my Jonin team," Kurenai answered. "Oh yeah, I forgot you wanted the Hyuga heir on your team. Hinata, right? Did you get her?" Naruto asked, not realizing they were still stood in the middle of the street. "Hi. I also got Hana's brother Kiba and Shino Aburame," Kurenai said, making Naruto smile. "Hey Kurenai-chan, I don't mean to sound rude, but I have to go to a meeting with the council, but after that do you want to go get some breakfast with me?" Naruto asked, blushing. Kurenai fake pouted and then smiled again. "Fine, but you're paying," she said, also blushing slightly. Naruto nodded and said his goodbyes and began to walk towards the tower again. Council room. Naruto walked into the council room where he was immediately met with smiling faces. The Hokage spoke up, grabbing Naruto's attention. "Ah, Naruto-kun, it's good to see you again. You're looking more like your father every day. I'd like to just talk to you, but you have been giving a very important mission." Naruto nodded, giving the signal for the Hokage to continue. "Naruto-kun, you will become a Jonin sensei for this year's Jonin. 2 of your students have already been decided, however the third is up to you," Hiruzen said while handing Naruto a file. Naruto started reading the files, his eyes widened when he read the names. You're giving me the Uchiha air. Why shouldn't Hatake Kakashi train him since he has Sharingan as well? Naruto asked, getting smiles from most of the civilian side and frowns from the clan sides, the Hokage side. Yes, some of us also thought that Kakashi-kun would be better suited to train the Uchiha, but others did not agree with us. You were chosen as you have the ability to teach them useful jutsus, the Sandaime said while glancing at the civilian side. However, Naruto knew exactly what he was saying. So they want me to teach the Uchiha, Hiraishin no Jutsu. Like I would teach him that, Naruto thought before remembering something. You said there was still one spot open on my team, right? Can I look at the file with the genin who do not have a team yet? Hiruzen passed Naruto another file, to which Naruto immediately started flicking through the pages before eventually stopping and smiling. I've found my third student, Naruto said, throwing the file on the table, making sure everyone could see who it was. You can't be serious, Naruto-kun, you want to train that demon? A pink-haired woman screeched. Naruto frowned. How can they think he is the Kyuubi? Naruto thought as he saw the civilian side's faces full of disgust over the Jinchuriki. Why should we allow you to train the demon, Namikaze-san? An old man wrapped in bandages asked. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the man. I believe training the Jinchuriki will be beneficial for the village. Naruto answered, waiting for the man to reply. Yes. You make a good point, however, what if the demon escapes? The man asked. Naruto thought for a couple of seconds before answering. The demon will not escape, as I will be able to suppress the demonic chakra with Fuinjutsu. Also, when Sasuke activates his Sharingan, he will be able to also control the demonic chakra within the Jinchuriki. The council all began muttering and whispering. Eventually the Hokage stood up. Okay, Naruto-kun, you will be the Jonin sensei of Team 7, which now consists of Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, Kazama Takashi. Be ready to pick your team up in an hour from the academy. Naruto nodded and left by Shunshin. Appearing outside the tower, he began walking through the streets looking for Kurenai. God damn it, why do I have to babysit brats? At least if Kurenai's doing it, it won't be too bad, Naruto thought as continued to walk. Naruto walked down the very crowded street where the people were getting ready to open their stores. He greeted a few civilians who bid him good morning, but his mind was set on something else, or to be more precise, someone else. He was looking for Kurenai so they could get some breakfast before they met their genin team. As he walked past the dango store, he had a glimpse of black and red. He smiled as he saw Kurenai walking towards him. She was wearing her usual red and white bandaged outfit with a Jonin flak jacket on top. She smiled once she saw Naruto. Hey Kurenai-chan, Naruto said as he walked towards her. You ready to get some breakfast? He asked with a blush. Hi, but you're paying, remember you owe me for ditching me, she said, fake pouting. Naruto looked on in disbelief. 1 minute she could be so serious, the next so playful. He liked that she wasn't so serious and could be herself around him. Oh, I'm sorry, forgive me Kurenai-chan, that damn council always bugging me. Come on, let's go get some dango. I'm certain you want to hear all about the council meeting. I can tell you do by the look on your face, Naruto said as he and Kurenai walked into the dango store, getting curious looks by most of the people. Naruto and Kurenai slightly blushed at the attention they were receiving. They went to the counter and ordered 10 dango sticks each. After collecting their order, they both went to look for an empty table to sit down at. When they sat down, Kurenai looked at Naruto with a questioning glance, and she asked as she saw Naruto. She began to giggle as she saw Naruto pour a whole jug of water down his mouth. Oh right, yeah, the council. Damn it Naruto, you have to calm down, it's just breakfast. He saw Kurenai nod while eating a dango stick. A slight blush appeared on his. God, that's, he thought when he saw her eat the dango stick slowly. He quickly willed his blush away so he could tell her his new position. Well Kurenai-chan, looks like I am going to be Jonin sensei too. You were lucky though, you got to pick 2 of your choices, Naruto mumbled, causing a wide-eyed expression from Kurenai that soon turned into a full-blown laugh. Ha 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 ha, what are they thinking? You'll end up killing the genin for being too loud, Kurenai said while laughing. Naruto pouted a little. Oh come on, I'm not that bad. Besides, I reckon you're just worried that my team's going to be better than yours. Naruto finished with a smirk, when he heard Kurenai slightly growl. You wanna bet? Kurenai said through gritted teeth. Naruto nodded and smiled at how easily angry he could get her. Kurenai stood up and pointed at Naruto. Alright mister, you have a bet. What are the stakes? Naruto gulped it and blushed slightly. How about whose ever team gets past the first round of the Chunin exam wins? Naruto asked, getting a quick nod from Kurenai, and continued. If I win you have to. You know what I'll tell you if I win? Naruto said, blushing. I'm an idiot, I could have used the bet to ask her out, Naruto thought while looking at Kurenai, who had her eyebrows raised. Okay, and what if I win? Kurenai asked seriously. Naruto got into a thinking pose for a couple of seconds before answering. Alright, so if you win I will teach you one of my most precious jutsus, Naruto said, earning a wide-eyed Kurenai. She narrowed her eyes straight away. Okay, who've you got on your team? Naruto was about to answer before the sound of an unwanted guest interrupted him. You want to know who Naruto's got? I'll tell you. My father told me you picked the dead last. What's the matter? Picking the worst student so your teaching won't look so bad, Asuma said as he walked into the dango store while smirking. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Asuma. Unlike you Asuma, I don't care what people think of me. I picked Takashi because everyone deserves a chance despite their status, Naruto said while standing up and glaring. Not everyone cares about themselves Asuma. Asuma glared at Naruto and put his hands near his trench knife holders ready to remove the blades. Naruto also put his hands near his trench knife waiting for Asuma to make his move. Whatever, I don't care what you think, Asuma said, bending his knees slightly. Naruto also bended his knees and was about to lunge when he heard a voice that made him stop. Stop it, both of you. Kurenai stood up, standing between them. She glared at Asuma, causing him to back off a little. I suggest you leave, Asuma, Kurenai said coldly. Asuma was taken back a little by the coldness in her voice, however he looked at Kurenai. I'm sorry for ruining your breakfast, Kurenai-chan, he said, hoping she would forgive him, but inwardly he didn't care since he was only interrupting the time Naruto was hanging out with her. Just go, she said, pointing towards the exit of the dango store. Asuma nodded and shunshined away. Kurenai turned around and began to walk towards Naruto. I'm sorry, Kuren. Naruto was interrupted by Kurenai, who had leaned up and kissed Naruto on the cheek and kept herself in that position for several seconds before letting go, leaving a heavily blushing Naruto and an also slightly blushing Kurenai. The others in the store were either whistling or glaring at Naruto for getting a kiss from the extremely beautiful Kunoichi. Naruto began to stutter his words, trying to find the right words. He was stopped by Kurenai. That was for helping Takashi. I know you didn't pick him as your student for the reason Asuma said. I'm glad you picked him. It would have broken Hinata's heart if Takashi hadn't become a ninja, Kurenai said, still holding a slight blush from kissing Naruto on the cheek in front of everyone. Naruto looked stunned for a second before speaking his mind. I'm glad you believe me. It's the least I could do for the kid since it was my father that pretty much ruined his life. He deserves a break every now and then, but why would Hinata be so affected? Naruto asked, completely confused. Kurenai smiled at Naruto's question. Hinata has a huge crush on Takashi. She admires his never-give-up attitude. She's possibly the only girl I can think of at the academy that isn't fawning over the Uchiha, Kurenai said, but looked slightly confused when he saw Naruto bang his head off the table. Naruto, are you alright? She asked, noticing everyone was staring at the two. Naruto threw her the file he had been given off the council. Kurenai began to read it but became wide-eyed at what she was reading. Oh my god, how could they do this to you? Naruto giving you the Uchiha. The Uchiha's biggest fangirl and Takashi's crush. Naruto began to bang his head even more when he found out that Takashi liked Sakura. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Naruto continued to bang his head off the table. Listen, Naruto, it's not that bad. I mean, I believe you will be able to make these three respectable ninjas, but what I want to know is why they are letting you teach the Uchiha. Shouldn't Kakashi, since he already had the Sharingan? Naruto looked at her seriously as he too remembered asking the exact same question. Yes, that's what I thought as well, but according to them I have better jutsus to teach. However, I do believe the council have got a Nikki to give Sasuke extra training, Naruto said, getting a complete look of disgust from Kurenai. So they expect you to teach the Uchiha the Hiroshin no Jutsu? Kurenai asked, getting a nod from Naruto, making her scowl even more at the council. I know how you feel, Kurenai-chan. The council may have become more powerful since Tu-san died, but I'd rather become a missing nin than teach that jutsu to someone who isn't family, Naruto said, getting a nod from Kurenai. Good for you, Naruto. I feel the same. That's your family's technique. You shouldn't be forced to teach someone it, Kurenai asked while glancing at the clock. She gasped when she saw the time. Naruto, we should go. We wouldn't want to be late now, would we? She asked, getting a smile and a nod from Naruto. Yeah, I don't want Aniki's reputation, Naruto said while walking out of the dango store with Kurenai. As they were walking towards the academy, Kurenai kept giving Naruto several glances, to which he noticed and sighed. Go on, he said, making her smile. So, since you have Takashi on your team, would you give him the right push towards Hinata for me? She asked, giving him a puppy dog eyes. Naruto sighed in defeat. No matter what, that was the only jutsu known that would work on Naruto. However, it was lucky that only Kurenai knew this. She had promised to keep it a secret. Once she saw how affected Naruto was when she used it, she called it her secret weapon against Naruto. Fine. But only for you. You do realize that the Hyuga clan will not take lightly on this, because for some reason they believe I will agree to a political marriage to Hinata, even though I have said no at least 1,000 times. I mean seriously, if I'm going to marry someone, it will be someone I love, Naruto said while walking down the busy morning street of Konoha. He stopped walking as soon as he felt something wet on his cheek. He looked to his side and saw Kurenai kissing his cheek again. Sweet, this must be what heaven feels like, Naruto thought while turning bright red. Kurenai was also bright red due to the fact she was kissing Naruto again on the cheek right in front of everyone. She hadn't known what had came over her, but at that moment she wanted to kiss Naruto, even if it was only on the cheek. Thank you, Naruto, for agreeing to help Hinata. You don't know how much it means to me that you would do this for me, she asked, generally happy that Naruto would help her without mentioning something in return. Naruto blushed even brighter if it was possible as he walked, muttering the words, women, under his breath, making Kurenai giggle that she had this affect on him. Academy. Iruka Yumino was standing at the front of the classroom looking at the new set of genin in front of him with pride. He had taught most of the clan heirs, however when he looked at Takashi he couldn't help but feel proud of him. At first, like the rest of the village, he thought Takashi was the reincarnation of the Kyuubi, but after watching Takashi and talking to both Naruto and the Sandaime, he found out that he was just a little boy who was lonely and played pranks on the village as a sign of recognition. Iruka smiled at the thought. He reminds me of myself at his age. Iruka walked towards his desk, ignoring the questions of where Mizuki had gone. He frowned at the traitor. If it wasn't for Takashi, he would have been killed. Iruka picked up the files on his table. He looked up to begin talking until he realized that everyone was talking and ignoring him. A vein appeared on his head. Shut up, all of you, and sit down, Iruka shouted, using the big head no jutsu, making everyone run towards their seats. Iruka smiled again once he saw everyone sat down. Okay, today you will be put on a 4-person team which will include 3 genin and 1 junin sensei. The teams are. Iruka started. Iruka turned the next page and gasped at what he was seeing. Naruto, a sensei? Never saw that coming. He smiled at the thought of seeing his old friend. Team 7 will be Kazama Takashi, Haruno Sakura. Iruka was about to continue until Takashi started jumping up and down in his annoying orange clothing while Sakura hung her head. Takashi, sit down. Takashi quickly sat down, still excited. As I was saying, Team 7 will be Kazama Takashi, Haruno Sakura and Uchiha Sasuke. He was about to continue before Sakura started screeching at Ino. Take that, Ino pig, true love conquers all. Iruka gained a vein above his eyebrow again. Sit down, Sakura, and let me finish. Sakura sat down again, apologizing as well. Your Junin sensei will be Namikaze Naruto. Iruka finished getting wide eyes from everyone in the class. Takashi stood up and asked the question everyone else was wondering. Namikaze as in the fourth Hokage type Namikaze. Iruka nodded before explaining, yes Takashi. Naruto is the son of the fourth Hokage. Iruka began to continue despite the state of shock his students were in learning about the fourth Hokage's son training a genin team. Team 8 will be Inuzuka Kiba, Aburama Shino and Hyuga Hinata. Your Junin sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi. Iruka finished getting a nod from Shino, a happy smile from Hinata and a smirk from Kiba. Team 10 will be Yamanaka Ino, Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji. Your Junin sensei will be Sarutobi Asuma. Okay, that's all the teams done, so just wait here until they pick you up. Iruka finished ignoring Ino's moaning that she wasn't on her Sasuke-kun's team. After 10 minutes the door opened revealing Asuma. He looked around spotting the Ino Shika Cho group. Team 10 follow me, he said walking outside the room quickly being followed by the 3 genin. As he walked down the corridor he saw 2 figures. He frowned when he spotted them but he stopped to greet them for the sake of the genin. Hello Kurenai-chan. Naruto, he said in neutral tone but was inwardly fuming over the fact Naruto was spending so much time with Kurenai. Naruto and Kurenai looked at Asuma and saw 3 kids behind him. Hello Asuma, these must be your genin, Kurenai said in a calm voice. She smiled at the 3 genin. Yeah, you should go pick up your genin teams, you don't want to be late, Asuma said. Kurenai looked at Naruto for a second before turning to Asuma. We're not late, you're just early, Kurenai said with a smile causing Naruto to chuckle. Asuma frowned a little. Anyway, I guess we should be going, Kurenai-chan, Naruto said ignoring the slight growl Asuma gave. Kurenai nodded and began to walk towards the classroom with Naruto. Asuma looked towards his genin team and saw Choji eating a packet of crisps. Shikamaru was looking at Naruto with raised eyebrows and Ino was drooling while looking at Naruto. Who is that Asuma-sensei? Ino asked. Asuma sighed knowing who she was on about. That Ino is Naruto Namikaze, Asuma said getting a shocked expression from Ino before she scowled. Damn forehead, getting Sasuke-kun on her team and having Naruto-kun as her sensei. Asuma sighed and continued to walk. Troublesome, Shikamaru muttered as he followed Asuma. Naruto looked at the classroom door for a second, hesitating slightly. He turned around when he felt a hand on his shoulder. Kurenai was giving him a warm smile while, "Don't worry Naruto, you're going to do great." Naruto nodded and smiled. "Thank you Kurenai-chan," Naruto said as he opened the door. The rest of the genin were all waiting patiently except Takashi. Where is he? Takashi whined, getting a sigh from Iruka. "Takashi, it is still early, have some patience," Iruka said, getting defeated nod from Takashi. Meanwhile Sasuke was brooding in the corner thinking about the new Junin sensei that was going to be training him. This Naruto must be powerful if he was chosen to train me. The council would have made sure of that, but why don't I know anything about him? Iruka sensei will know something about him, Sasuke thought while standing up. Iruka sensei, what can you tell us about Naruto Namikaze? Sasuke asked, getting a surprised look from everyone. Well, Sasuke Naruto is one of the strongest Junin in the village, only rivaled by Hatake Kakashi. He graduated from the academy at the age of 4 and became a Chunin at age 7. He finally became a Junin at the age of 10. Iruka finished getting complete widening of eyes from everyone. Sasuke sat back down with a smirk on his face. Good, I need a strong sensei to defeat him, Sasuke thought, rage billowing inside of him over the thought of his older brother. The door slowly opened revealing 2 figures. Naruto and Kurenai walked into the room looking around. Kurenai saw Hinata and smiled. She saw Shino looking at her through his shades. Finally she looked at Kiba, who was giving her lustful looks. She sighed. Looks like I'm going to have to beat the pervertedness out of him. Naruto also looked around and saw Sasuke staring at him. Wow, he looks so much like Itachi. He turned his gaze towards the female of his new team. Sakura was giving him the same looks. Ino was drooling slightly onto her table. Ah, fangirls. Finally Naruto looked at Takashi, who was smiling. He seems so happy, but I can see through that mask. Takashi, Naruto thought as he walked towards Iruka. Ohayo Iruka, Naruto said as he walked over to Iruka and smiled. It's good to see you again, Naruto. I never thought you would pick up a genin team, Iruka said smiling. Naruto was about to speak again but Sakura interrupted. Wait, this is Naruto Namikaze, but he doesn't look that much older than us, she screeched, getting a frown from both Iruka and Kurenai. Show some respect, Sakura. Naruto may be young but he is strong. He even beat Uchiha Itachi in the final round of the Chunin exams, Iruka said. Naruto smiled at his old friend as did Kurenai. She looked at her genin squad before speaking. Meet me at training ground 8 in 10 minutes, she said, shunning away. Naruto smiled before looking up to the last 3 genin. Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes, Naruto said, disappearing in a yellow flash, leaving the 3 genin and Iruka stunned. I can't believe he finally learned it, Iruka said with a smirk. Learned what, Iruka-sensei? Takashi asked while running his hand through his long brown hair. Iruka looked at Takashi with confusion until he remembered Takashi not being in the lesson when they learned about the 4th Hokage's techniques. That Takashi was the Hiraishin no Jutsu, the jutsu that gave the Yondaime, Minato Namikaze, the moniker Konoha's yellow flash, Iruka said, causing the 3 genin's eyes to widen. You better hurry up, Naruto does not like waiting, Iruka said, walking out of the room. Sasuke stood up, running towards the door. He beat Itachi, he can tell me how he did it, Sasuke thought as he began to run up the stairs, quickly followed by Takashi and Sakura. Naruto was on top of the academy roof, leaning over the rail watching the village. He smiled at how peaceful the village was. The sound of the door to the roof flying open made Naruto turn around. You were nearly late, Naruto said while smiling at a panting Sasuke, Takashi and Sakura. Alright, before we go into introductions, do any of you have any questions? Naruto asked, looking at the all too eager faces the 3 genin were holding. Sasuke walked closer towards Naruto. How did you beat him? Sasuke asked, looking at Naruto with pleading eyes. Naruto looked at Sasuke. He couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Poor kid. Itachi must have really done a number on you. I beat him through training hard and never giving up, Naruto said, getting a slight scowl from Sasuke. Sakura was next to voice her opinions. Are you really our sensei? I mean, how old are you? Naruto frowned at the question. Yes, I am your new sensei and I am 15 years old, Naruto answered, getting wide eyes from the 3. Sakura looked impressed at Naruto at the thought he was Jonin sensei at the age of 15. Jonin sensei at 15, he must be strong. I bet Sasuke-kun is stronger, Sakura thought, staring dreamily at Sasuke. Naruto sighed, regretting what he was about to do next. Okay, let's start off with some introductions. Tell us what your likes and dislikes are and also your dream. The 3 genin looked at Naruto in confusion. Naruto-sensei, why don't you go first? Sakura said, getting a sigh from Naruto. Okay. My name is Naruto Namikaze. My likes are none of your concern. I have a lot of dislikes and I don't really have a dream yet. The 3 genin's jaw dropped. He didn't tell us anything but his name, they thought. Okay, your turn, Pinky. Sakura scowled but continued anyway. My name is Sakura Haruno. My likes are, she looks at Sasuke. My dislikes are Ino Pig and Takashi Baka, and my dream is, looks at Sasuke again. Naruto's sweat dropped. To think this is what most young kunoichi are like now. Okay, you big eyes, Naruto said, pointing at Takashi, who also scowled at the nickname. My name is Takashi Kazama. My likes are Sakura-chan, Ramen and Gigi. Naruto smiled at the Hokage's personal nickname. He continued to listen to Takashi. My dislikes are people who judge me without knowing me and Sasuke-tem. My dream is to be acknowledged by the village and become the strongest Hokage ever. Takashi finished with fire in his eyes. Naruto smiled and looked towards Sasuke. Okay, now you broody. Sasuke glared at Naruto before speaking. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things, and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream, because I will make it a reality. I'm going to rebuild my clan and kill a certain person. Sasuke finished, glaring at nothing in particular. Naruto sighed. Itachi, you really messed up, Sasuke. Okay, meet me at training ground 7 tomorrow and don't be late. Naruto finished disappearing in a yellow flash. Hey Sasuke-kun, want to go on a date with me? Sakura asked, blushing. No, he responded coldly, walking away. Sakura-chan, I'll go. Oh. Takashi started but stopped by the sudden punch on his head. No, Takashi baka. Sakura walked off, fuming over Sasuke's rejection. Naruto appeared in the Jonin lounge in a yellow flash. He walked over to Anko and Kurenai, who were already talking. God, I don't think they could have gave me a more difficult team, Naruto said as he fell into the chair. Anko and Kurenai giggled at Naruto. Kurenai put her hand on Naruto's shoulder, causing him to blush. Don't worry, Naruto, I'm sure you'll be an excellent sensei. Naruto smiled and nodded at Kurenai. You're right, especially considering I'm going to win that bet, Naruto said, making Kurenai smile. We'll see, Kurenai said while sipping her sake. Anko looked at the two in confusion. She had known Naruto and Kurenai were good friends, but what they were doing was borderline flirting. Anko grinned at the thought. Oh, Nai-chan. Kurenai looked over towards Anko while taking another sip of sake. So when are you and Naruto going to, you know? Quote. Kurenai blinked for a couple of seconds before Anko's words sunk in. She spat her sake all over the table and went completely bright red. She looked at Naruto, who was the exact shade of color she was showing. What, why? You mean Anko-chan? Kurenai asked, trying to play innocent. Anko smiled at her friend. Oh, you know, I was just wondering when you two were going to lose your virginities to each other. Naruto and Kurenai went even brighter red this time. What, me and Naruto are just friends? Kurenai shouted at Anko, making her laugh insanely. Sure, keep telling yourself that, Nai-chan. Anko said, sipping some of her own sake. Naruto, seeing how out of hand this could get, decided to intervene. So Kurenai-chan, what were your genin like? Naruto asked, getting a sigh from Kurenai. Well, Shino barely talks. Kiba is totally hormonal and Hinata, she is still too shy. Oh, by the way, are you pushing Takashi in the right direction? Kurenai asked, glad that Naruto had changed the subject. Not yet, but I will add a little comment there and then. By the way Sakura treats him, it won't be long before he finds Hinata, Naruto said, getting a smile from Kurenai. Thank you, Naruto-kun, Kurenai said, quickly putting her hand over her mouth and blushing. Naruto, for his part, was not holding up any better and had turned bright red. Anko, however, was not so embarrassed. Also, it's Naruto-kun now, is it, Nai-chan? Just when did you two get so close? Ah, look at Naruto, you've embarrassed him. Kurenai looked at Naruto and saw he had gone completely bright red. Oh, Naruto, I'm sore. Kurenai started but was interrupted by Naruto, who had lost all trace of his blush. You don't have to apologize. Besides, I don't mind you calling me that, Naruto said, smiling at her, causing her to blush and nod thankfully at Naruto. Anko, however, decided she hadn't finished teasing the pair. So Nai-chan, when's the wedding? Kurenai glared at Anko, but what surprised her the most was Naruto standing up. Anko, I suggest you stop teasing Kurenai-chan, as she has always been kind to you and helped you, especially with any problems you had with Aniki. Anyway, I'm out of here. I'll see you later, Kurenai-chan. Anko. Naruto finished his speech, speaking emotionlessly and frightening Anko a little. Kurenai was also shocked that Naruto would stand up for her like that. She had known Anko was teasing, but she also knew Anko didn't know when to stop. Anko was about to apologize to Naruto but sighed when she saw him vanish in a yellow flash. She looked at her best friend with regret in her eyes. I'm sorry, Nai-chan. Me and my big mouth. I just keep causing you problems, don't I? Kurenai looked genuinely surprised at Anko's statement before smiling at her best friend. Don't worry about it, Anko-chan. I knew you were teasing even if you did go a little too far, but if I ever hear you call yourself a problem again, I will hit you. It was now Anko's turn to look surprised. That was the first time that Kurenai had ever threatened to hit her. She smiled, however. Thank you, Nai-chan. When I see Naruto, I will also apologize to him as well. You two have been nothing but supportive towards me, but Nai-chan, I've known you long enough to know when you genuinely like someone, so let me ask you something. How do you feel about Naruto? Anko asked, grateful that her friend had forgiven her and helped her through her life, but now she wanted to see her friend as happy as she was when she was with Kakashi. Kurenai looked down for a couple of seconds in deep thought. Do I like him like that? I mean, he's not a pervert, he doesn't think I'm weak because I'm a woman, he is also very handsome, smart and funny, also he never tries to take advantage of me. Could I possibly be falling in love with him? No, we are just friends. If something were to happen between us and made us hate each other, I don't think I could bear it. We must stay friends. It's not like anything could happen between us, right? Kurenai thought while obviously lying to herself. Over the years she had become more and more attracted to Naruto. Every year he seemed to get even more handsome. It took every bit of willpower she had not to just kiss him. Kurenai looked up to Anko, sadness in her eyes. Please Anko-chan, can we just drop it? Kurenai pleaded. Anko looked at Kurenai and nodded, knowing how much of a turmoil her friend was going through. Fine, but sooner or later you're going to have to face this head on, Anko said while inside was thinking about something completely different. To think you of all people have melted the Ice Queen Naruto. From this day forward I am going to do whatever I can to get you two together. Anko then began to talk to Kurenai about a guy she had tortured information out of. Hokage Monument. Naruto appeared on top of his father's head with yellow flash. He sighed and sat down, leaving his legs dangling over the side. He smiled slightly. I wonder how different my life would be if you two were here. I know you would laugh if you saw my new students. I just don't think I'll ever be able to get them to work together. How did you do it, Dad? Naruto sighed and chuckled slightly. I wonder what you and Mom would think about my crush on Kurenai-chan. The presence of a chakra signature caused Naruto to turn around, looking at the person interrupting his peaceful time. Naruto turned around and was surprised to see Takashi walking over towards him. However, Naruto noticed straight away that he didn't have his emotional mask on. Naruto was shocked at how lonely Takashi's eyes were. I am sorry I never helped you before, Takashi, but I will now. Naruto frowning inwardly but smiled nonetheless to try make Takashi feel more at ease. Oh hello Takashi, what brings you up here? Naruto asked as Takashi walked over towards him and sat down on the Yondaime's head next to Naruto. Takashi sighed, looking down at the village, sadness clearly visible in his slightly larger than normal eyes. Just needed somewhere to think, that's all, Naruto-sensei, Takashi said, still not looking at Naruto. Naruto however looked towards Takashi and smiled while laying back, letting the sun hit him. I guess great minds think alike, but why the Yondaime's head? Naruto asked, waiting for Takashi to answer. Takashi had a small smile on his face as he answered, well, I've always looked up to the fourth. I want to be like him, strong, respected, and to become the Hokage, he said while smiling at the village. Naruto, while still laid down, looked at Takashi through the corner of his eyes and smiled. Well, those goals will be difficult to achieve, but I believe you will be able to do it. Takashi's eyes widened and snapped his head towards Naruto. Naruto-sensei believes in me. Does this mean he acknowledges me? The brown-haired boy thought while tears formed around his eyes. However, he had remembered a certain question he had been wanting to ask Naruto when they were alone. Why me? Takashi asked, getting a sigh from Naruto. Why did your father choose to seal the Kyuubi in me? Takashi finished waiting for Naruto to respond. Naruto sat back up and looked up at the clouds. That's a good question. I myself had been wondering that for years. But after all, hearing stories about you from everyone, I think I understand why. My father was a kind man and a great father, but he was the Hokage first. My father was a very good judge of character. I believe he saw something in you, and until now I never knew what it was. Naruto stopped looking at the clouds and faced Takashi, who was looking at Naruto with pleading eyes. What is it? What do you see? Takashi asked, barely being able to hold his tears in his eyes. Naruto smiled and put his hand on Takashi's shoulder. Your determination. I truly believe that you are the only person in the village who has the ability to hold the Kyuubi at bay while taking the hatred of the village. You are what Hokage-sama says. You are a hero. So don't forget that you are the jailer, not the prisoner. Naruto finished, watching tears fall from Takashi's eyes. Naruto let Takashi cry for several minutes. He was about to take Takashi home when he heard the younger boy's stomach growl. Naruto chuckled slightly. How about we go to Ichiraku's before we head home? Takashi gave one of his rare genuine smiles and nodded. Naruto and Takashi walked down the streets of Konoha. The civilian glared at Takashi but never said anything as they saw Naruto, or in their eyes Namikaze-sama, walk along with him. Takashi ignored the glares, smiling happily at the thought of free ramen. Naruto, however, was in deep thought about something. Well, the next few weeks are going to be different. I should apologize to Anko. I know she was only teasing, but she knows how I feel about Kurenai-chan. Naruto took a quick glance at Takashi and saw he was talking to himself about what type of ramen he wanted. Naruto's sweat dropped. Yes, definitely different, Naruto thought as they both walked towards the ramen restaurant. It was another bright day in Konohagakure and most of the people were happily getting along with their lives. However, one Team 7 was walking through the streets with frowns on their faces. Naruto was cursing the council for giving him a genin team. Bastards. This is so boring. Why do I have to do D-rank missions with the genin? I should be doing a rank missions at least. Oh well, might as well go see if the old man has any more missions. The genin on Team 7 were also cursing the fact this was their 7th D-rank mission in a row. How am I meant to get strong enough to kill him if all I'm doing is D-rank missions? I'm an Uchiha, I deserve the best. Sasuke continued to brood as he walked down the street, ignoring all the civilians that waved at him. Sakura was not so ignorant with the rest of the civilians and smiled and greeted a few of the civilians. Most of the civilians knew who Sakura's mother was, part of the council, and was very influential when it came to civilian affairs. Why won't Sasuke-kun ever notice me? Arg, it must be Takashi Baka getting in the way. She frowned at the thought. Takashi was also having a bad day. His landlord had woken him up in the early hours of the morning, telling him to keep the noise down even though he was completely quiet. He then went to do some D-rank missions after a couple of hours training with the rest of Team 7. However, he was not expecting Tora, the fire daimyo wife's cat. They had chased the cat for several hours, and even when they had caught it, the cat would just scratch their faces. However, what was annoying Takashi the most was the glares he was receiving from the civilians, even though they had lessened due to the fact that Naruto was with him, but they were still hurtful. Why won't they stop staring? He thought while walking down the street with his head down. Sakura and Sasuke had also noticed the stares Takashi was getting but ignored it, thinking the civilians were angry at Takashi for the pranks he did on them. Naruto, however, glared at a few of the more confident civilians that looked like they were about to speak up, but once they saw Naruto's ferocious look, they quickly backed down, not wanting to anger their Namikaze-sama. Team 7 continued their walk towards the Hokage Tower, not realizing that today was going to be the start of a big change for all of them. When Team 7 made it into the Hokage's office, they were met with smiles from the Hokage and Iruka but scowls from the advisors. Admittedly, the scowls were aimed at Takashi, but both Sasuke and Sakura were clueless of the reason. Team 7 reporting in capture Tora completed, Naruto said, getting smiles from everyone. As soon as he had finished his sentence, however, a rather large woman ran up to Takashi and took the cat out of his hands and started tightly hugging the cat. More take that, you stupid cat, the three genin thought while glaring at the cat. Tora, my baby, the daimyo's wife said while crushing the poor cat. Thank you, she finished while giving a bag of coins to the Hokage and walking out of the room. The Hokage turned to Team 7 and smiled. Congratulations Team 7, that was your 7th D-rank mission. Now what mission would you like to do now? Pick weeds, paint a fence. The Hokage was about to continue until the sound of the daimyo's wife echoed through the window. Tora, no comeback. The Hokage looked back at Team 7 and gave a weak smile. Or capture T. No. The three genin shouted, but inwardly Naruto was shouting the same thing but never let his face show his emotion. Takashi, however, was not as good at hiding his emotions. Come on Gigi, can't we do any cool missions? I mean, those are civilian missions, not missions for ninjas. Sakura and Sasuke were surprised at the way Takashi would address the Hokage. Naruto, however, couldn't resist smirking at the Hokage's personal name from Takashi. Takashi show Hokage-sama some respect and are you out of your mind? D-rank missions are for genin, Iruka shouted using his big head. No, just you, making Takashi shrink. However, Sasuke seemed unaffected and was also thinking the same as Takashi. I agree with the Dobi. I'm an Uchiha, I deserve high-ranking missions, Sasuke said, making Naruto sigh. Iruka was about to shout at Sasuke but was cut off by the Hokage. Sasuke, Uchiha, do not for 1 second think your last name will grant you privileges with me. Genin teams are allowed to go on C-rank missions only if their Junin senseis believe they are ready to. Hiruzen finished leaking a bit of killing intent at Sasuke, making him back away. Do you believe your genin are ready for a C-rank mission, Naruto-kun? The Sandaime asked, making Takashi and Sasuke look at him pleadingly while Sakura had a concerned look on her face while looking out of the window. Yes, I believe they are ready for a C-rank mission, Hokage-sama, Naruto said, getting a cheer from Takashi and a smirk from Sasuke. The god of Shinobi sighed. Okay, your mission will be a protection mission in the land of Wave. Send Tazuna-san in please, he said through the intercom, getting an immediate, "Hi Hokage-sama." After several seconds of waiting, there was a knock on the Hokage's door. Come in, Hiruzen said, making the door open, revealing a tall old man who was clearly drunk if the bottle of sake in his hand was anything to go by. This is my protection, a bunch of brats, especially the shortest one with the stupid-looking face. Are you really a ninja? Tazuna said, making Takashi blink a few times before the word sunk in. I'll kill you, Takashi said, jumping towards Tazuna but was quickly grabbed by Naruto. What's the point in having a protection mission if you're going to kill the client, idiot? Naruto said, calming Takashi down. I am the super expert bridge builder, Tazuna. I expect you to provide me super protection even at the cost of your lives. Until I get back to my country and complete my bridge. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Tazuna but again never showed any outward emotion to the bridge builder. At the costs of our lives, what are you hiding? Naruto thought as Tazuna left. He looked down to his genin. Go home and pack your bags and meet me at the south gate in 20 minutes. Dismissed, Naruto said, getting nods from the three. When they left, Naruto looked at the Hokage with a serious gaze, showing the Hokage that he was serious. Hokage-sama, I would like to request another team to accompany me on the mission, Naruto said, standing up straight. The advisors gave him curious looks but never said anything. So you sense it as well, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen asked seriously, getting a nod from Naruto. I believe Tazuna-san hasn't told us everything, Naruto said. The Sandaime sighed. I agree, Naruto-kun, I will send another team with you. But who? The Sandaime said to himself. However, a knock on the door broke the old Hokage from his thoughts. Come in, he said. The door opened, revealing a boy with red marks on his cheeks and a small white puppy on his head. The second boy had a large coat and a pair of sunglasses that covered most of his face. The last genin was a small girl with lavender hair and plain white eyes. As the three genin walked in, a final figure walked through the door. Naruto blushed slightly. Kurenai-chan. Kurenai walked in behind her genin, surprisingly wearing her Junin vest. She smiled when she saw Naruto, getting curious looks from her three genin. Hello, Naruto-kun, she said, blushing slightly after adding the suffix. The three genin stared wide-eyed. She had never added that suffix on anyone's name before and had found out of her reputation at being an ice queen. Team 8 reporting in. Babysitting elder's grandson complete, she said, turning towards the Hokage, giving him the payment. Naruto smiled, ignoring the curious looks from the three genin. Hello, Kurenai-chan, it's good to see you again, he said, smiling with a slight pink tinge on his cheeks. The Hokage smiled despite how awkward it was getting. He had known about his son and Naruto's attraction towards the Genjutsu mistress and promised himself he would not show any favoritism towards either of them. He saw Naruto as a part of his family, especially after Naruto's father died. He had made sure Naruto would have everything he needed and was glad Naruto had not become arrogant over his name and the amount of respect he got from the civilians. Asuma wasn't arrogant, but being the son of the third Hokage had also earned him the same respect from the civilians, especially the female civilians, which he used for his own pleasure. Ah yes, well done Team 8, that was the 10th D rank mission your team has completed. Your next mission is a C rank mission. You will accompany Team 7 to the Land of Waves and protect the bridge builder Tazuna. The Sandaime informed. Kurenai's eyes narrowed slightly and looked at Naruto. He gave her a quick nod that told her that he would tell her everything. Kiba, however, was ecstatic over the fact he was going on a C rank mission. Yes, finally a cool mission, Kiba shouted, jumping in the air while the little dog barked. Shino and Hinata sighed while Kurenai's eyebrow twitched. Stop being a baka, Kiba, she shouted, punching the young Inuzuka in the top in the head. Naruto nervously laughed at Kurenai's bad temper. He had been on the receiving end of many of those punches before. Kurenai glared at Naruto after hearing him laugh. She began walking over towards the blonde. Got something you would like to say, Naruto-kun? Kurenai said with a smile on her face as she walked towards Naruto, cracking her knuckles. Naruto immediately went pale and began to back away. No, Kurenai-chan, of course not. She walked up to him so their faces were inches apart. Blushing slightly, she grabbed hold of the collar on Naruto's Jonin jacket and pulled his facer even closer, making him blush at the situation. Good. She smiled and started dragging Naruto across the room. Pack your stuff and meet me at the south gate in 10 minutes, Kurenai said to the three genin as she walked out, dragging Naruto along with her. Everyone in the room stood there wide-eyed as their strongest Jonin was dragged off like a child. I do hope Naruto-kun will be alright, Hiruzen said while sighing. Hinata suddenly went even more wide-eyed. That was Naruto. Kurenai-sensei always talks about him, Hinata said. Kiba was also curious of the blonde Namikaze. Yeah, she always says he's the strongest Jonin in the village, but he doesn't look that old. How old is he, Hokage-sama? Kiba asked. Hiruzen sighed. Naruto-kun is 16 years old and is indeed one of the strongest Jonin in the village. Kiba stood wide-eyed at the information he had just learnt. It is expected from the son of the Yondaime Hokage, Shino said as the three of them went home to pack their traveling gear. Is it wise to send the last Uchiha and that thing on a mission outside the village? One of the advisors known as Kaharu asked, getting a scowl from the Hokage. Sasuke and Takashi will be safe under the protection of Naruto-kun and Kurenai. Homura looked at her two old teammates. Perhaps it is a good idea the Uchiha might finally activate his Sharingan. Hiruzen sighed, knowing it was definitely going to be a long day. Kurenai was packing her travel gear. She had just finished packing the large backpack full of clothes and scrolls filled with food, kunais and shurikens. She looked over to where Naruto was and smiled. Naruto was sat on Kurenai's couch looking at the flowers on Kurenai's table. He looked up and saw Kurenai walking out of her room with her backpack on. She looked at him slightly confused because he never had his bag. Naruto-kun, aren't you going to get your travel gear? We have to go in 5 minutes, she asked, showing a hint of annoyance over the fact Naruto would forget. Naruto, however, smiled and pulled a small scroll from a pocket on his Jonin flak jacket. No, I'm good, I have everything in here. Kurenai sighed while mumbling something about smartass ceiling masters. Naruto chuckled but stopped when he heard a voice. Oh, isn't this cute? Got him over already, Nai-chan, damn, you work fast, Anko said while walking into the room, followed closely by Kakashi, who gave a simple one-eye smile. Naruto looked at her with a frown. He didn't hate her but was still angry because she just didn't know when to stop teasing. Anko saw the frown and sighed. Oh well, here goes. Look, Naruto-kun, I'm sorry about teasing both you and Nai-chan. Naruto looked at her in a surprise before smiling. I forgive you and I'm sorry as well. I knew you were only joking, but well. Naruto was stopped by Anko as she hugged him. I know about your feeling towards Nai-chan, she whispered in his ear so only he could hear. Kurenai smiled at the scene. Both Anko and Naruto were her best friends and she hated to see them fight. However, her face turned serious as she looked at Anko and Kakashi. Okay, I'm going to be gone at least 2 weeks, so no parties and don't wreck the place with your activities, she finished, blushing and also glaring mostly at her roommate Anko, who in turn just smiled and nodded. Alright, we should set off, Kurenai-chan, or we're going to be late, Naruto said looking at Kurenai. She nodded, walking towards the door. Bye guys, Naruto said as he opened the door. See y'all later guys and be careful, especially you Ototo, Kakashi said while staring at Naruto. He scoffed slightly. Don't need to worry about me, Aniki. Just don't spend all day looking at my name on the memorial stone if I die. Naruto said, trying to lighten up the mood. He quickly walked out of the apartment, followed by Kurenai, who had caught up with him. So what do you think of the mission? Kurenai asked as they walked towards the south gate. Well, Tazuna-san is obviously hiding something, but we need proof before declining a mission. The only thing I'm worried about is the Jonin, Naruto said. Kurenai nodded, agreeing with Naruto. They stopped suddenly when four figures dropped from the building tops. Hello, Kurenai-chan. Naruto. Going somewhere? Asuma said, growling at the mention of Naruto but also curious to where Kurenai was going. She sighed. We're going on a mission outside of the village with the Jonin. Kurenai said, not really in the mood to talk to Asuma. He, however, was thinking otherwise, so. Anyway, Kurenai-chan, want to go on a date when you come back? Kurenai sighed again. No, Asuma, this is the third time today you've asked me. Naruto and the Jonin snickered at Asuma, who secretly glared at Naruto. Well, okay, I'll see you later. He finished walking off, fuming, closely followed by his three Jonin, leaving an incredibly annoyed Kurenai and an amused Naruto. Well, that was entertaining, Naruto said as he and Kurenai walked towards the gate. When both Naruto and Kurenai made it towards the south gate, they immediately sweat dropped at the scene. Takashi and Kiba were arguing over who was going to beat the first ninja while Hinata secretly stared at Takashi. Shino was leaning on the gate and Sasuke was brooding as usual while Sakura kept trying to talk to him. Naruto-sensei, Kurenai-sensei, Kiba and Takashi shouted. Tazuna frowned. These two are my protection, they're nothing but brats. Takashi and Kiba went to attack Tazuna but were quickly stopped by Naruto. Bakas. Don't worry, Tazuna-san, myself and Kurenai-chan will keep you safe. Tazuna smiled a little and started to walk outside of the village. Unknown to all of them, they were being watched. As Tazuna and the Konoha nins were walking towards Wave Country, Naruto couldn't help but notice Tazuna was acting weird, a little too weird for Naruto's liking. Naruto had been quiet for most of the trip so far but had been listening to Kurenai tell the Jonin about the ninja system. He smiled when he heard Takashi declare he was definitely going to become Hokage. His eyes narrowed, however, at a small puddle on the side of the road. What the hell, it hasn't rained in days. He looked over towards Kurenai, who nodded at him. As the group walked past the small puddle, both Junins gave it one last glance out of the corner of their eyes. When the group were a couple of meters ahead of the puddle, it suddenly started to morph into two figures with masks on and a giant claw linked with a chain. The two figures rushed towards the unprepared Naruto and Kurenai. Naruto and Kurenai's eyes widened when they felt the chain wrap round them, and what happened next made everyone gasp. The two Junins were ripped apart by the giant claws on the mysterious duo's hands. They rushed towards the Jonins and Tazuna with intent of killing. Sasuke, however, jumped in the air, stopping the duo by pinning the chain to a tree, stopping their movement. However, the two just detached the chain and ran past Sasuke. One of them turned off to attack Takashi and Kiba, who were frozen in fear, while the other rushed towards Tazuna. However, Sakura and Shino jumped in front of Tazuna with the intention of sacrificing themselves. Just as the two were about to connect with their targets, Naruto appeared and punched the one in front of Tazuna hard enough so he stuck into the tree. Kurenai appeared in front of the other one and stabbed him in the neck with a kunai, instantly killing him. She sighed as she looked at the frightened look on the Jonin's faces. She then looked down at the dead figure at her feet. These are the demon brothers from the hidden mist, Kurenai said, getting a nod from Naruto, who looked at Tazuna, leaking a little of killing intent at the bridge builder. Tazuna-san, I think we need to talk now, Naruto said, making him visibly gulp. The group had tied the surviving brother on to a tree. The mist ninja had woken up and was glaring at Naruto. How did you know we were there? The demon brother asked, getting also curious looks from everyone but Kurenai. It was obvious it hasn't rained in days, so why would there be a puddle? To be honest, if I wanted I could have took you both out there and then, but I needed to find something out, Naruto replied. However, Tazuna was slightly angry at Naruto over the fact he had used them as bait. Why didn't you take them out? We could have died. Naruto glared at Tazuna, making him flinch. I had my suspicions back in Konoha you were hiding something but this proves I was right they were not after us Tazuna-san they were after you but this is not bandits or thieves, these are ninjas this is easily higher than AC class mission, I suggest you start talking, Naruto said coldly, Tazuna's face however became saddened. I'm sorry for dragging all of you into this, we only had enough money to pay for AC rank mission, Wave is extremely poor at the moment. The bridge is our last hope but it would ruin Gato so he has sent people to kill me. Please help us, Tazuna begged at Naruto's feet. Naruto sighed, even though you deserve to be left here to die we will help you but try to be more honest in any future mission Tazuna-san, Naruto said walking towards Wave again everyone just shook their head and continued walking as well. Kurenai walked right next to Naruto giving his an admiring look before asking what had been on her mind since Naruto had agreed to help Tazuna. Why did you carry on with the mission Naruto-kun? Kurenai asked. Naruto turned around looking at the group of genin talking to Tazuna. Because Kurenai-chan if we do help Wave it will secure us a lot of future missions also the genin need to know the difference between what's right and what's wrong. Kurenai smiled at Naruto's selflessness it always surprised her how far Naruto